So our next panel, the title is I Have a Business Idea. Where do I go for funding? A lot of times funding is what makes or breaks a certain venture. So with that, we are pleased to have Mr. Nick Steele with us. He is the Executive Director of Access Community Capital Incorporated. Now, this is a community loan fund that provides affordable capital to small businesses located in Nevada. Access Community Capital is a minority-led, mission-driven organization directed by entrepreneurs who understand the plight of business ownership. As an entrepreneur, Nick knows firsthand how lack of access to affordable capital can adversely affect the trajectory of a business, stifling its growth potential. While also investing in other entrepreneurs, Nick is focused on changing the landscape of opportunity for underserved populations by operating Access Community Capital as a community development financial institution, compelled to address the inequities present in the lending landscape. Nick is most excited about his current role as both a lender and business advisor to entrepreneurs developing their own ideas into successful companies. So we're very glad to welcome Nick and his panel, and we'll turn it over to Mr. Steele to introduce his panel and commence with the discussion.
Thank you, Sheldon. Thanks for the warm introduction. I thought the panel, can you hear me okay? All right. I think Danielle led the last panel in a terrific manner. There were some really great insights from the panelists and previous winners. So I'm looking forward to this discussion. We have three individuals that are really creating impact across the state of Nevada. And I'll just start off with a brief introduction of the three individuals, and then if each of you can turn on your screen and unmute yourselves. Chandler Allen from the United States Department of Agriculture. Chandler Allen is a member of the Fallon Paiute Shoshone tribe of Fallon, Nevada. He served 6 years in the Nevada Air National Guard, during which time he attended the University of Nevada, Reno. He graduated as top scholar from the College of Business. He then moved to Washington, D.C., where he worked as a financial analyst for the Assistant Secretary of Indian Affairs, Office of Indian Energy and Economic Development. He then moved to Denver, where he served as an economic development specialist for the Division of Energy and Mineral Development, responsible for overseeing the Tribal Energy Development Capacity Grant Program. Prior to coming to USDA Rural Development to be the Business Programs Director, he returned to Nevada to be the Economic Development Director for the Fallon Tribal Development Corporation, working to better the economic environment and self-sufficiency of the tribal community. Welcome, Chandler. Next, Thank you. Next, we have Sandy Gordon, Vice President of Business Development Officer at the Nevada State Development Corporation. Sandy Gordon has been with Nevada State Development Corporation for the past 7 years. Prior to this, she has worked in the banking and finance sector for the past 25 years in both consumer and commercial lending capacities with both national and local financial institutions. Sandy is certified as a clinical hypnotherapist and paralegal, loves to officiate wedding ceremonies, and had her own business as a licensed contractor for many years. An endurance event enthusiast, Sandy has completed a couple of marathons and climbed Half Dome in Yosemite. Sandy, I'm scared of you. Welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Next on our panel, we have Mary Kerner, CEO of Rural Nevada Development Corporation. Mary Kerner is the CEO of the Rural Nevada Development Corporation, otherwise known as RNDC. Mary has been with RNDC for 20 years. Her passion is helping the small business communities in rural Nevada. She has been honored as one of the top 10 lenders in the nation by the Small Business Administration and was recently given the Distinguished Leadership Award by the Council of Development Finance Agencies. Her professional development and education include a bachelor's degree in business administration, certification as an economic development finance professional through the Nevada Development Council, and she is also a certified public official through the University of Nevada, Reno. At RNDC, they have private, state, and federal funding agencies they work with to bring the best fit to their small business loan clients. RNDC is a private, nonprofit headquartered in Ely, Nevada. Thanks for joining us, Mary.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So with this panel discussion, there's so many different topics we can talk about. I just wanted to kind of start things off by giving each of you an opportunity to provide just a brief background of your organization, its focus in rural Nevada, and maybe some sense of the products and services offered. So I'll start with Mary, if that's okay.
Sure. So RDC is a non-traditional lender, so we have greater flexibility than like what a bank would have. And so we have different funding agencies that we use. USDA Rural Development and the Economic Development Administration are two of our largest, but our largest non-federal partner would be Nevada Gold Mines with our I-80 fund. And so we have a lot of flexibility as far as getting out there and trying to get money into the hands of our small businesses in rural Nevada, because we have a very diverse group of funders. Our loans are $500 up to $250,000. So on the smaller scales, you know, we're used to doing, but we definitely fill the niche out here in the rurals.
Awesome. And Sandy, if you can jump in.
Sure. Again, Sandy Gordon with Nevada State Development Corporation, located here in Reno. And just because we are in the metro area doesn't mean that we don't serve the whole state of Nevada, which we do, including rural Nevada. So what Nevada State Development Corporation is a certified development company appointed by the U.S. Small Business Administration some 40 years ago to originate, underwrite, and service their SBA 504 loan program. And so what we do essentially is finance commercial real estate and heavy equipment, non-rolling stock, for business owners who want to solidify their place in the community, their labor force, by having a solid home base for their business. In essence, meaning they replace their rent with mortgage, and they don't have to be at the mercy of a landlord for their expenses in that category. So that's what our passion is here at Nevada State Development Corporation. And we do loans from, my base is from Reno all the way to Elko and Ely. And then I have a counterpart in Las Vegas, as we have a team of 5 in Reno and a team of 7 in Vegas. They cover the whole Southern territory.
Wow. Thank you very much. And Chandler?
Yes, thank you. So here at USDA Rural Development in Nevada, our main focus is really helping the rurals. So majority of our products across the board are usually tied to population sizes. So typically we're not so much in Clark and Washoe, but there are areas of those counties we can work in. At USDA RD, we do have programs that help various different aspects. So I'm focusing on the business. I'm the business programs director. We also have a housing department and also a community facilities program that helps with infrastructure, water, waste, things of that nature. So in the business programs here in Nevada, like I said, the main focus is the rurals. And one of our main partners in the rurals is Mary. So I'm really glad Mary's here because she's going to give you a lot of information on how we help and how she and RNDC are great partners for us. So we have a variety of programs, or I should say products, that actually can support business in the rurals, from small to big to various different industries. So we can talk about that. But yeah, thank you.
All right, excellent. And before we jump into to any questions, I just want to let the audience know. Feel free to ask any questions via the chat function. I'll be checking the chat. So if there are specific questions for any of our panelists, please feel free to ask those. So I just want to ask Sandy a question. Our attendees are primarily startups, early stage businesses. utilizing the SBA 504 program, do you see those programs being utilized by our early stage businesses? I know in some of the earlier conversations that we had leading up to today with some of the individuals that were going to be attendees, they were interested in equipment and other financing, and you mentioned that may be an avenue through the 504.
Mhm. Absolutely. One thing that I want to hit on also is the fact that when an entrepreneur, a new business owner, or a startup is looking at financing heavy equipment or commercial real estate, one of the things our program does is we do have to participate with another lender. We only bring them a percentage of the financing, typically 40% of the loan to value. And we have to work with another lender, such as Mary at Rural Nevada Development Corporation, for the other percentage of financing. We pull it all together because it lessens the risk for both parties, essentially. And in doing so, the SBA, who is what we underwrite to the SBA. We are an advocacy group that basically puts together a credit memo for the business owner and says, "Dear SBA, this is why you should finance this business owner." With that said, the SBA really does support and honor startups. Point blank. We do get quite a few startup loans through for commercial real estate and heavy equipment financing. In doing so, for instance, in working with Rural Nevada Development Corporation, and we work with every lender in the state of Nevada is what it boils down to. But in doing so, we are able, if that business owner has a rock solid business plan with very accurate projections, and we could talk more about projections, all of that at a later time. The SBA will be on board. Now, the SBA can be on board, but our primary lender in the project also has to have an appetite for the type of financing that the business owner is looking for. So that's kind of how it works a little bit, but SBA supports startups. Point
Excellent.
blank.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And it's great to see the panelists actually having experience working with each other. I think that's fantastic. Mary, does RNDC have any niche loan programs that you would like to mention that would be important for startup and early stage business owners? In your introduction, you mentioned that your loan sizes range from $5,000 to $250,000. So that's a pretty wide range, which is great. And I'm sure you offer a number of different programs. Can you give us some insight?
Sure. So we have 22 different funds that we run out of my office here in Ely. And so typically when the borrower applies, they're just applying to RNDC. And usually not until closing will they even know where we're funding that from, unless I'm working with a partner as Sandy or somebody where we're having to do two loans at the same time. So we try to put them in the best product for them. So we have micro funds, which have greater flexibility, like on collateral requirements and things like that. We have disaster relief and recovery funds, which have lower interest and more flexible payment schedules at this time. And then we have just your regular real estate type loans. I use the word regular loosely because we're not a bank, so it's not considered what your industry regular would be. So everyone needs to kind of remember that we are the alternative lender. So no two loans are alike, everything is different, and we really have to just cater to the person and what their needs are. And so we win awards for being creative because we try to find a way to make it work instead of a way to turn it down. And so we don't have that little box that says, you know, if you don't have this credit score or this loan to value ratio or this debt coverage ratio, we can't do it for you. So we really try, you know, how can we maximize on their lives to address the negative that's impacting their ability to get into a regular conventional product. So I think our niche is just the fact that we're alternative and that we are able to help more people because of that.
That's fantastic. And Chandler, kind of a similar question. Can you describe some of the loan programs that fall under the USDA or some of the other programs, whether even if they're outside of loan programs for the USDA? And then the follow-up question would be, different than going to a financial institution or a CDFI or the development corp, should individuals that are interested in growing their business come to you directly?
Great. Yeah, so we have a couple variety of products that are specific to kind of startups that I would suggest. Our number one product is our business and industry loan guarantee program. Now that's a loan guarantee. So essentially for the kind of simplicity of the sake is if a business is looking at getting lending and the lender is having some risk questions and they want to mitigate risk, they'll essentially apply to the USDA to be their federal partner that'll support their risk if things go bad. That works for all parties because it reduces the risk for the lender frees up the money, the borrower gets the money, they get to do their business in the rural communities. So that's our big product and we'd like to grow that product. Typically in Nevada is for bigger loans. And this is where Mary comes into more of our smaller programs that we really like to push. We have two programs. Our larger one's called the Intermediary Re-Lending Program. And then the smaller program is called our Rural Micro Entrepreneurial Assistance Program. We call it RMAP. Those programs both do have limit caps. But the way that those programs worked, as Mary kind of alluded to, was actually they apply to us as a lender. We approve them for a certain amount of funding, and then they actually get to go lend that out into the communities. And that really helps us as USDA. And just as Mary alluded to, this is probably my favorite part of RNDC and development in Nevada, I would say for the smaller lenders, is the creativity of RNDC. And just like she said, I believe she said 22 funds, but with that being said, and just like she also said, the lender doesn't even know where truly those funds are coming from which organization. And that helps because what she really likes to do is find the goal of the project, work it together. They look at, so that they really don't make the borrower jump through all the hoops. And they make it work for that borrower, for the community, for Nevada and the organization. So we really partner with them heavily for developing in the rurals. Now, as far as coming to us specifically, I would say yes and no, because I would say yes on the technical assistance side, because we can help provide maybe some insight. The federal government is technically a free technical assistance, kind of advisor, where we can help provide resources to the best of our ability. And then also we can kind of maybe guide them if necessarily they don't have the proper guidance. But I would definitely not say you do not need to come to us first. If you are going to utilize a USDA program, you don't necessarily have to come to us, because those in the communities, in our program, they're typically applied through from a lender. So on the front end, like I said, if a borrower wants some USDA advice, we are more than happy to provide technical assistance on the front end, whether it be what products to look at, how's my business look, are there things I should be worried about? Can you look at this? Can you look at that? So we do like to help out the best of our ability, but no, you do not need to come to us. And yes, we do have those programs to help the smaller lenders. But yes, always talk to Mary.
That's fantastic. I think one of the things that's great about this discussion is that we can really learn, and the audience can learn how to utilize their time and most efficiently. And so knowing which party to go to for different purposes is really important. And so I guess I'm gonna circle back to Mary and then to Sandy. Are there characteristics that you can identify in your more successful applicants that you can share with us? And I know you go to a greater length than some institutions when working with applicants. But can you give us some characteristics for those applications that you see that are more successful than others? And we'll just start with Mary and then Sandy.
Sure. So obviously passion is one. So, we deal with a lot of people, and some of them we like to call tire kickers. And we don't mean that in a negative way, but they always just like, oh, well, maybe I'll do this. Well, maybe I'll do this. I really hate my job and I really don't like my boss, so maybe I'll do this. And so we call them the tire kickers. And so those are usually not as successful as the ones who are really passionate and they've done all their due diligence, they've done a ton of research, and they just come in and they have they have it all figured out and they already know. Maybe they've gone to SBDC for some of the technical assistance advising. Maybe they've just done a ton of research over the past couple of years and they're just kind of ready to make that leap into the startup, or they started small and now they're ready to go into kind of their phase 2. And as far as like what one of the successes that I find is that helps them be successful, one of the tools that I see kind of across the board with it doesn't matter what the loan amount is if they have a professional bookkeeper or CPA that's helping them. Because a lot of times, startups are on a shoestring budget and they come in and they say, well, my wife is really good with numbers, and so I'm going to have her do this. Or my husband, used to keep the books for this, car dealership or whatever it is. But when you start your own business, it's different. And if you do not have that help either through SBDC or somebody, it really, really could impact you at the end. Because if you're not looking at that every single month or at least quarterly, and at the end of the year, you find yourself in trouble. And then you wonder, well, it was a whole year. How did I not know this? But if you have a bookkeeper that's looking at that, that's trained to look at that, they know what to look for. So that would be like one of the biggest things that I see that helps launch us from the success to, just kind of barely making it kind of success bar. It is to get a professional bookkeeper or a CPA, but somebody that's trained that really knows what they're doing, what to watch for. That would be our biggest piece of advice, I think, that we see that helps our people be successful.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. We see the same thing with Access as well too, and we recommend individuals have a third-party bookkeeper producing monthly financials, and if they can even take that a step further and have a conversation with a CPA or financial consultant, so that they can work on budgeting and how do they meet their budgets on a month-to-month basis, is very helpful. Okay, and Sandy, are there any characteristics that you'd like to identify for our audience that you see in your more successful candidates?
Absolutely. I'd have to second everything that Mary just talked about, because those are the building blocks for success, point blank. You have to have that external team, your accountant, your bookkeeper. You need some legal counsel also. You need to know what your resources are, because I think the biggest reason most businesses fail, twofold: disorganization and thinking they know it all and they can do it all. Because I especially saw this when I was in the construction industry, somebody just being pretty much like Mary alluded to, I'm just tired of what I'm doing. And so now I'm going to be a contractor and drive around with a phone and talk all day and do this, that, and the other. And it's like, yeah, that's not the reason. That's not the reason to get into business. And so, and you can have all the capital in the world, but if you're unorganized, you're going to go down eventually, because you're not going to be keeping on top of your books. You're not going to necessarily know what your employment team is doing at times. And there are all of these components are intricate to your success, and also staying curious. To me, staying curious personally and professionally throughout your life is the most important thing. If you keep, as Mary talked about, that passion going, that wanting to always learn more, always knowing that somebody out there may know more than you, but if you can get them on your side and on your team, you can conquer so many things, because the passion is really the thing that keeps somebody getting up every morning and going after it. And believe me, as anybody here knows, that is the key to everything, is just staying the course.
Wow, I think we should replay those answers from both of you, because I think you just made some outstanding points. Stay curious, stay passionate, and stay the course. I need to put that on my walls for my kids. But those three are mantras that successful entrepreneurs generally have, and just as individuals, we should live by. Thank you for those answers. So I'm just gonna kind of step back, move to a more of a higher level, and think about where we are in this past year. Interest rates have climbed dramatically since the beginning of the year. 30-year mortgages have gone from 3% to 6%. Have you seen this interest rate environment change your institution or change the type of industries that you're seeing these days? And has it, a step further, have you seen it change your analysis for processing applications. And we'll start with Sandy first, and then Mary, and then Chandler.
Well, it's a interesting place that we find ourselves in economically. Again, nothing new. This cycles, we know, at least every decade. And when I first started my career with B of A back in 1980, while I was in college, prime lending rate was 21%.
Yeah.
I couldn't figure out why everybody was so unhappy because I was clueless. And I thought, wow, everybody is really in a bad mood. What is going on here? So I asked my long-term lenders. They're like, yeah, 21% is a pretty high interest, prime lending rate. And that curtails what's happening now at the level of financing. A home mortgage at that time was 16, 17%. The differentiation being the price of that home was a lot less than what it is today nationally, of course. So with that being said, our interest rate on the 504, for instance, a 25-year fix was about 3.07 in January of this year. It's now 6.44. We have not adjusted for November, and prime just adjusted recently to 7%. So I venture to guess we're going to be going up again, even though we are pretty much tied to the 10-year treasury. With that said, I still have not slowed down yet. Now, the residential market here in the metro area has definitely slowed. We're starting to see some shifts to the medium home pricing. But here in the commercial market, we're still busy. And I think the reason why we are is because we do a percentage of financing, like I said earlier. When we only are offering that 40% and we've got our lending partner, whether it be Mary or Michelle at Rural Nevada Development Corporation, or one of our lenders here in the metro area, they're bringing a lower percentage of financing. So their risk in the deal is lessened. With that said, that keeps this program still moving along, because as the unforeseen economic times continue to unfold and we see how this is going to roll, people are not as feeling as risk averse in this loan program. But as the rates go up, cash flow shifts for our business owners who are buying commercial real estate or heavy equipment. Money becomes a little bit tighter based on what they can service in the way of debt. So that's where we're at right now. We're still going to keep riding the course, but I'm happy to say we're staying fairly consistent still.
That's great insight. Mm-hmm. And Mary?
Yeah, I would echo what Sandy said. I get asked that quite often, have you guys seen a slowdown in applications? And the answer is no, it's quite the opposite. We are seeing more applications now, probably than we have in several years, actually. And so I think it's just coming out of that post-COVID, post-recovery environment where people are being more entrepreneurial. And our rates, so again, being alternative, it's a little bit different. They don't change, they don't shift. We have work plans that we have to present to our funding agencies. So like, for an example, USDA, I'll use them because Chandler's here. And so our work plan with them was being updated every so often. And it was always very time consuming to do that and get it through the right people, through your state, regional, and the national offices. And then by the time you got it done, it was kind of crippling how we did things. And this is going back like 10 years ago. And so what we did back then is we just did a work plan that covered, so our base rate, like on our federal funds, is 6%. And that has not changed. And so our work plan says that our loans will be 6 to 12%. It just gives us this huge, huge spread. And then with our disaster relief and recovery loans, like for an example, with the I-80 fund, those were at 2 to 3% because they were, disaster relief and recovery, and we didn't want to gouge people and things like that, but still had to pay our light bill and still doing business. But being an alternative lender doesn't mean that we are the cheapest lender, because typically people that come and get loans through us can't get it done at a bank, and that's why they're with us. And so we try to get them into a position to get into that conventional product. So no, we are busier than we have ever been, and the rates really aren't affecting us as much, being an alternative lender. And we still do some disaster relief and recovery loans for people that were impacted by COVID or who are still being impacted by COVID. If they qualify, like I said, we try to put them in the best product that we can. But yeah, the rate environment is always very interesting and always very up and down.
That's fantastic. Great insight. And Chandler, are you seeing any impact at the USDA?
Not necessarily. And I would have to kind of echo Mary's, especially in what I'm seeing in Nevada and the smaller size projects and business project is maybe kind of an uptake of more people seeking those, looking at those, pursuing those, just because whatever happened in the last couple of years, they're looking at other options. But on the front end, and I don't have too much to add besides what they did, from our perspective at USDA, and I'm sure Mary and Sandy can echo these, but from the federal perspective, we always look at it from, in our eyes, our assistance from our programs will help alleviate that impact of the rising interest rates, right? Because essentially we're reducing risk. So that's the goal that we want to impact of helping support the communities and the borrowers, is just like Mary said, they're not coming to us because they're golden loans and they're all going to get funded. They're coming to us because they're having trouble somewhere. So if that's the case, especially from the government side, we want to alleviate some of that risk and really help them, to also help the lender free up the cash, but then also say, hey, lender, we're supporting you financially on the back end. Can you reduce some of this risk or some of the rate? So that's kind of the way we look at it.
Fantastic. I think from that last piece of our discussion, what was most insightful is that everything is relative, right? Interest rates may be rising, but the USDA is actually trying, from a federal standpoint, is trying to reduce that risk. So they're trying to feed more money to organizations like RNDC and Nevada State Development Corp are actually looking at how their programs are relative to kind of things in the past. And when you look at rates at 6% compared to 21%, it really puts things in perspective. So I appreciate that insight. We're running to the end part of our discussion, and so I just wanted to end this with one question, and then if you would like to add anything, please feel free to do so. So we'll start this with Chandler, then Sandra, Sandy, and then Mary. You've already offered so much insight through your conversations. For the individuals that are participating here, the first panel we had past winners that are operating existing businesses. Later on, we'll be speaking to young entrepreneurs and older entrepreneurs pitching their ideas. What advice can you offer attendees and the audience on when to start to engage with you and when to think about financing as part of the life cycle of their idea and operating their business? And we'll start with Chandler, knowing that you feed money to the other two organizations, and then we'll go to Sandy and then Mary.
Yeah, so from my perspective, and I always say this to pretty much any borrower or a potential borrower that does call, is when to engage us. I say right from the beginning. I say let's get everyone involved. Every time someone comes to me and they want a project, we can talk it over the project. But if so, on the back end of that question on kind of like how they get funded and whatnot, is from our perspective, the more front end work they come to us, the more research they've done. Kind of to touch on some of the other topics we've talked about. Organizational management experience, that's a big one we analyze. The accuracy of the pro formas, the accuracy of cash flow projections, all of that front end work is going to really help a growing or starting business that wants to really move forward, obtain financing, because all of us are going to look at that no matter what. That's the key things we're going to look at right off the bat. And so coming to us right off the beginning, we can help address those issues. We can help highlight the good stuff that you do have, and if there are weaknesses, we can help point those out so we can to provide betterment. Like I said, if your projections are inaccurate, we can go that touched on a previous conversation about having a CPA or some legal advice. So those are all on and I think my perspective, when to engage us, whenever you want to, as soon as you can, because whether or not we will be running things the whole time is just like one of the big things for us is we can help talk to you, see where you're at, and then we can reach out to Mary. And then, Mary has her, they, like I said, they got so many things to analyze and they don't even really tell you, they're doing so much back end work that they're just helping you get your stuff done. So like I said, come to us immediately. I think Mary would probably say the same thing. I know they like to give us your form. We'll get your form filled out and we'll get you going. So we're that same way. I think all of us in Nevada are really supportive of the Nevada communities and the smaller borrowers. I know we are. So yes, always reach out to us. And the more front end research and more front end work that's accurate you do, I think will definitely help the projects.
Fantastic. Thanks so much. I really appreciate your time today. Sandy?
And I have to validate exactly what Chandler said as well. I'll have entrepreneurs that contact me because they've been referred to me just to find out more about what I do, what I have to offer, and who else I might know. And I always appreciate these calls because it gives me a chance to find out where they are. And essentially, people will say, well, I don't know, can I buy commercial real estate? And I'm like, yes, you can. Yes, you can. So with that said, I'll say, hey, if it's not something that is feasible to you right now, which it isn't for a lot of startups right in the beginning, they've got their hands full with everything else that they're doing. So just making sure that they can manage their rent is enough at some point. But I say, hey, how did you end up where you are today, starting this business and getting it going? That's the same thing for purchasing and financing commercial real estate. It starts with an idea, with an intent. And if you keep that in the back of your mind, and I can show you some of the things that you can focus on as you build that concept in your mind, that is half the battle. Because a lot of people will come to me, I could never finance commercial real estate. It's just out of line for me. And I'm like, it's only 10% down with this program, because the three components of the 504 that make it the most attractive vehicle for financing commercial real estate is that it's always going to have a good rate in the market in comparison to all lenders. It has a 20 or a 25-year fixed rate on the 40% of financing that is allowed through the SBA. And then you essentially are putting 10% down once you are no longer considered a startup. While you're still considered a startup, which means you don't have 2 full years of tax returns or you haven't been in business for 2 full years, it's 15% down. It's the most reasonable and economical program out there. And like everything else that a startup or a business owner, entrepreneur is doing, it's about knowing what your options are, setting your sights on what you want, and then working with those that can help you. And that's what we're here for as a nonprofit.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time and everything that you offered today. Absolutely. And lastly, Mary, if you can take us home.
Sure. So echoing what Sandy and Chandler said, bringing you on early is definitely a good thing. We do have a really good network with the Small Business Development Center with the SBDC counseling. And so if you have your application in and you have everything except projections, or you need to have a market research study done, or you're just not sure how, to go about marketing your business, and that's going to be really important, with the proceeds from our loan is to market so that people know, that you're changing or that you're there to begin with. So we'll tie in with them, and those services are usually really important at the beginning as well, because then they can help you on the front end. And I have seen that with our counselors. Often we'll find things that the borrower has not thought of yet. And so it might put them down the road a little bit longer on applying for a loan, but it will help them be better positioned when they do want to apply.
Fantastic. Well, if this is being recorded, I think this is one of those discussions that I'll be sending out to a lot of our clients. The insights from the three of you have been fantastic, and so hopefully they're extremely helpful for the attendees that are watching, and the ones at home as well. I'll turn this back over to Sheldon. Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it. Have a wonderful